There comes a point when a Sigma empath stops explaining, stops rescuing, and stops absorbing pain that isn't theirs. It's not coldness, it's awakening. They've realized that empathy without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. And the moment they stop being controlled by guilt, emotional manipulation, or the illusion of being the good one, everything changes. They start to move differently, quieter, calmer, more deliberate. Their silence begins to speak louder than their words ever did. Because once a Sigma empath masters emotional detachment, they no longer react, they respond. And that shift confuses every manipulator who once thrived on their kindness. This video will dive deep into the psychology of a Sigma empath who refuses to be controlled, how they turn compassion into strength and peace into power. Subscribe for more insights into emotional mastery, empathy, and the psychology of inner freedom. And tell me in the comments, have you ever reached that moment where your peace became your greatest rebellion? They recognize manipulation disguised as love. The Sigma empath's greatest awakening begins the moment they see through the disguise of love that was really control all along. For years, they might have mistaken manipulation for connection because it often comes wrapped in warmth, affection, and just enough validation to keep them close. The narcissist or emotional manipulator doesn't always show up as cruel. Sometimes they appear as someone who cares too much, uses guilt as affection, or calls control protection. But eventually, the Sigma empath starts to notice the pattern. How love always comes with strings attached, how their needs slowly shrink while the other person's demands expand. They start paying attention to the small things, the tone that shifts when they say no, the disappointment when they set a boundary, the subtle punishment through silence or withdrawal of affection. What once felt like love begins to feel like emotional debt, and that realization hits hard because empaths love deeply, but Sigma empaths love intelligently once they wake up. Instead of reacting with anger, they observe. They start to see the emotional games for what they are: conditioning, testing, and emotional dependency masked as care. The moment they see the manipulation clearly, the attachment begins to dissolve. They stop apologizing for being too much or too sensitive, and they start asking why someone benefits from their self-doubt in the first place. That's when everything changes. The Sigma empath doesn't fight for control, they simply stop giving access. The manipulator's power fades, not through confrontation, but through quiet clarity. It's the calm decision to no longer feed the illusion, to no longer participate in emotional currency that drains them. They don't unlove, they just understand. And once they understand, there's no going back. Because the moment a Sigma empath recognizes manipulation disguised as love, the spell breaks, and what's left isn't heartbreak, but freedom. They stop explaining their boundaries to people who benefit from crossing them. One of the clearest signs that a Sigma empath has evolved is when they stop explaining why their boundaries exist. In the past, they'd go out of their way to justify their limits, trying to make others understand that their no wasn't rejection, it was self-respect. But manipulators thrive on explanations. They twist them, guilt-trip them, or use them to find loopholes. And that's when the Sigma empath finally realizes boundaries explained to the wrong person are boundaries surrendered. They begin to notice a pattern. Every time they defend their limits, the other person doesn't listen, they negotiate. The conversation shifts from understanding to persuasion. You're too sensitive. You're overreacting. I didn't mean it that way. These phrases once triggered self-doubt, but now they only reveal who benefits from the chaos. The Sigma empath no longer wastes words on those who pretend not to understand what they already know. Instead of reacting, they act. The calls stop being answered, the messages get shorter, the access quietly closes, their silence becomes the new line of defense. Not to punish, but to protect their energy from people who mistake empathy for permission. This is where their strength lies, in calm disconnection, not confrontation. To outsiders, this shift might seem cold, but to the Sigma empath, it's liberation. They've spent too long explaining their heart to people who used it as a map for manipulation. Now, they understand that true boundaries don't need permission or validation, only consistency. And once they reach that point, no amount of guilt, charm, or pressure can reopen the door they've closed. Because the Sigma Empath no longer needs others to understand their boundaries. They just need the courage to keep them. And that quiet courage, it's what makes them untouchable. They learn that detachment is the ultimate form of empathy. At some point, the Sigma Empath realizes that caring deeply without boundaries isn't compassion, it's self-destruction. They've been the listener, the healer, the emotional anchor for people who never gave the same in return. Every time they tried to help, they absorbed pain that wasn't theirs. Every time they forgave, they taught others they tolerate more. And eventually they begin to see that the purest form of empathy isn't about holding on, it's about knowing when to let go. Detachment doesn't mean they stop caring, it means they start caring intelligently. They learn to separate compassion from responsibility, to feel deeply without drowning in someone else's storm. They understand that some people don't want healing, they want attention, validation, or control, and trying to fix them only feeds the cycle. So, the Sigma Empath takes a step back, not out of coldness, but out of clarity. They begin to observe without absorbing. They can sense pain without needing to carry it. They can love without losing themselves in it. This emotional distance doesn't make them heartless, it makes them balanced. It allows them to choose where their energy flows, instead of bleeding it into relationships that thrive on their kindness. And that's when something powerful happens. Their peace becomes their empathy. Their calm presence starts healing more than their words ever did. They no longer overextend to prove they care. Their stillness speaks louder. They learn that real empathy includes empathy for themselves, for the part of them that was always exhausted from trying to be everything for everyone. This is the moment the Sigma Empath transcends emotional chaos. They no longer need to rescue anyone to feel valuable. They love, but from a distance that honors both hearts. Because true empathy doesn't mean carrying every wound. It means knowing which ones aren't yours to hold. They turn emotional sensitivity into strategic awareness. What once felt like a curse becomes their greatest advantage. Sigma Empaths are born with heightened emotional sensitivity. They feel everything. Tension in a conversation, insincerity in a compliment, or manipulation hidden behind charm. In the past, this sensitivity made them vulnerable. They absorbed people's pain, confusion, and deceit as if it were their own. But as they evolve, they stop reacting to what they feel and start analyzing it. Their empathy becomes precision, an emotional radar tuned to truth. They begin to see emotions as data, not drama. Every feeling, every energetic shift tells them something valuable. When someone lies, they notice the micro shifts in tone. When someone hides resentment, they feel the energy before words confirm it. This ability allows them to navigate relationships, workplaces, and social dynamics with calm, strategic awareness, not emotional chaos. What used to drain them now empowers them because they've learnt to read without absorbing. The difference lies in control. Instead of drowning in the flood of others' emotions, the Sigma Empath observes from the shore. They no longer carry every sadness or fix every problem. They interpret, adapt, and act with quiet insight. This transformation makes them appear almost psychic, not because they can read minds, but because they understand human energy better than most people understand themselves. Their sensitivity becomes a weapon of awareness. They can walk into a room and instantly detect who's genuine, who's insecure, and who's pretending. But unlike before, they don't react or expose it. They use that knowledge to protect their peace and position themselves wisely. This is what separates a Sigma Empath from an ordinary empath. Emotion no longer controls them, it informs them. Their awareness becomes strategic, their empathy becomes strength, and their sensitivity turns into silent power that no manipulator can outplay. They withdraw their energy, not to punish, but to protect. When a Sigma Empath pulls back, it's never about revenge, it's about survival. They've learned that not everyone deserves access to their time, warmth, or attention. In the past, they gave endlessly, believing that love and understanding could fix everything. But constant giving without reciprocity only left them drained and invisible. So now, when their energy starts to feel heavy, they quietly step away. Their withdrawal isn't loud. There's no confrontation, no dramatic exit, just distance. They stop over-explaining, stop over-investing, and let silence do the work. To outsiders, it may look cold or detached, but in truth, it's a deeply self-aware act of protection. They've finally learned that peace is more valuable than proving their point or keeping one-sided connections alive. By pulling back, they reclaim control over their emotional space. They rebuild the energy that others once took for granted. It's not about teaching someone a lesson, it's about remembering their own worth. And once a Sigma empath learns to guard their energy this way, they become untouchable. Their calm, quiet absence becomes the boundary that speaks louder than any words ever could. They stop trying to fix what thrives on their healing energy. There comes a moment when the Sigma empath finally sees the truth. Some people don't actually want to heal. They want to feed off the one who does. They realize that certain relationships are not built on love or understanding, but on emotional dependency. The more they give, the more those people take. The more they try to help, the more resistance they face. And slowly, it dawns on them. Not everyone is broken by accident. Some have learned to live in their chaos because it keeps them in control. So, the Sigma empath stops. They stop rescuing, explaining, and absorbing pain that was never theirs to fix. They stop mistaking compassion for responsibility. They no longer confuse being needed with being valued. Instead, they start observing patterns. Who drains their peace, who returns their energy, and who only calls when they need healing. Their withdrawal isn't cruelty, it's clarity. By stepping back, they allow others to face the consequences of their own choices. They understand that true healing can't be forced, it must be chosen. And once they stop pouring life into those who refuse to grow, the Sigma empath's light burns brighter. Their energy stops being used as medicine for the unhealed and becomes fuel for their own evolution. They replace guilt with emotional clarity. Sigma empaths used to carry guilt like a second skin. Every time they said no, set a boundary, or chose themselves, they felt selfish. That guilt kept them stuck in cycles of overgiving, apologizing for emotions that were valid and for needs that were human. But as they evolve, something shifts. They start seeing guilt not as compassion, but as conditioning, a leftover response from being told that kindness means self-sacrifice. Now, they pause before reacting. Instead of feeling guilty for walking away, they ask themselves one question: is this draining or healing me? That moment of awareness changes everything. They no longer interpret discomfort as cruelty. They understand that saying no doesn't make them cold, it makes them conscious. Emotional clarity becomes their new compass. They learn to differentiate between love that uplifts and love that manipulates. They stop overanalyzing whether someone will be hurt by their boundaries and start focusing on whether they'll be healthy without them. The guilt fades because they finally realize protecting their peace is not a betrayal, it's wisdom. And once that clarity sets in, their empathy transforms into something unshakable, calm, grounded, and free. They become uncontrollable because they've mastered themselves. The final stage of a Sigma empath's transformation is quiet but powerful. They become emotionally untouchable, not because they've hardened their heart, but because they've learned to master it. They no longer need approval, attention, or validation to feel secure. Every manipulation that once worked on them, guilt, fear, flattery, or silence, loses its grip because they've learned to understand themselves deeper than anyone else ever could. They've faced their own darkness, confronted their own wounds, and rebuilt from within. That kind of inner mastery can't be controlled by anyone. It's not rebellion, it's self-awareness sharpened into strength. When someone tries to provoke them now, they don't react, they read. When someone lies, they don't argue, they observe. When someone tries to dominate, they don't submit, they detach. Their empathy remains, but it's disciplined. Their compassion is sharp, not naive, and that's what makes them truly unstoppable. Once a Sigma empath learns to control their mind, emotions, and reactions, they become the calm in every storm, impossible to manipulate, impossible to own. Because the person who no longer needs control over others can never be controlled themselves. When a Sigma empath reaches this level of emotional mastery, there's no going back. They no longer chase peace, they are peace. Their silence speaks louder than confrontation. Their distance teaches louder than arguments, and their calm becomes their greatest defense. The same energy that once attracted chaos now builds empires of clarity, purpose, and freedom. If you've ever reached that point where you no longer react, explain, or seek validation, you've stepped into your power, the kind that doesn't shout, doesn't prove, and doesn't chase. It simply is. Subscribe for more deep insights on emotional mastery, detachment, and the psychology of strength. And tell me in the comments, have you ever realized that your peace made you unstoppable?